If my voice sounds off, it's because I've been dealing with these sinuses, man. Seems like right now my nose being stuffed up is the default, man. But anyhow, the work got to get done. But Brother Shotelco wrote that yesterday, and I want to expound upon that a little bit, all right? I think it's important that you guys understand how these narratives are hijacked, and more importantly, why they're hijacked. And this is not a response video. I told y'all, I'm not playing ignorant with nobody. This is me talking to us, all right? Pull up a chair. Let me pour some water on you real quick. I recorded that response video on Monday night, and I planned on dropping it Tuesday night because I was so tired. But on Tuesday night, I noticed that there was a change in the tone of those comments. And even though it was an uneasy feeling, I wanted to capture that moment. Because every now and then, you need to understand exactly what you're going against. I know a lot of you don't have channels, so you're unfamiliar with the business of YouTube. But it basically goes like this. Because so many creators use this platform as a means to create a revenue stream, their numbers are more important than the narrative they put out. So what happens is a huge platform puts out a narrative. And because so many smaller platforms aspire to be like that platform, they basically copy and paste. Same narrative, take the same position on the narrative, same talking points and everything, in an attempt to gain an audience. This is why so many creators are getting caught up not living the life they preach, because they only preach what gets them paid. And what happens as a consumer, especially if you're naive, is you hear everyone saying the same exact thing. So you hear so many people saying it that you start to believe it also. Because they say if you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. Well, look at those comments. Were they not all the same talking points? That's how quickly a lie spreads. And as long as someone sounds like they know what they're talking about, people will not only believe it, but they'll start to mimic it themselves if they're ever in a discussion on that topic. D.E.I, discriminatory against whites. D.E.I didn't earn it. D.E.I racist. D.E.I less qualified. That's why in 70 plus comments, there are only 4 narratives that you see clapping at you. And when you clap back, this how many show up. Not a nan, nutter, nutter, not a nan. They only got 1 bullet in the gun. Some of them didn't even have that. Some of them came at me with a Nerf. Yeah, somebody said I was the king of all simps in a video that don't even talk about women. His feelings told me I had to say something. That's the best his brain could produce. But like I said, DEI doesn't mean any of that. DEI is a direct response to the discrimination practiced against others historically by white people, particularly by white men in this nation. But that's how they hijack the narrative. The why gets much deeper than that. Out of all the comments, this is the one that resonates most with the real sentiment of the backlash. Do y'all know why they restricted employment to just white people on the Hoover Dam? It's because they wanted to avoid a racial conflict. Because throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the US saw many uprisings due to labor issues. A lot of unions were formed, a lot of strikes occurred. And while this is happening, black folks are migrating from the South to other areas. So many areas had newly abled hands available. Every time workers were going on strike, the companies were bringing the strike breakers. Who do you think the strike breakers were? A conflict would arise every time. And in 1929, the country went into the Great Depression. So in 1931, the Hoover administration knew that if white people did not go to work first, there was going to be an issue. There were 12 million people, or a quarter of the country's workforce, unemployed. How does that resonate with what's going on today? People are feeling that pinch in their wallets. There's a lot of uncertainty ahead of us. People are getting laid off. And there are some amongst us who are looking at others as being undeserving of the positions we have. Despite the fact that you couldn't get that job without being qualified for it, they believe special concessions were given to you because they don't see how you could have achieved that otherwise. Because that's just what they've always thought of you. And let me make it clear for the umpteenth time. This is not an indictment on all white people. I know there are millions of good white people out in this world. Y'all don't have to put it in the comments every time. I actually work with some great ones. Bodie and Paul and Steve and Aaron and Robert and Richie and Dave. Those are my guys. And everyone knows that Sarah is my girl for show with her old ass. I'm talking about the ones who see an issue with black progression. I don't give 2 fucks about them, and I won't pretend for a minute that I do. You'll see their animal avatars in the comments soon. See, we could do all that internet talking about character and merit and all of that, But what does the facts show? From nepotism to racism, there has always been another factor at play. Sure, some people like myself have made it where we've made it by being extremely skilled. Others have made it where we've made it by simply having connections. Because there's a saying that's been around forever and still holds true today: it's not what you know, it's who you know. I've been on several job sites where a wireman gets a call from one of their buddies telling them to drag up while the books are low because the job that they're on, the data center or the battery storage, is about to go into time. I was on a job when someone got a call about an opportunity that was coming up, and because he was so skilled, he was able to give the contractor all the certs he had, and they were able to put in all these certs on the call that most people didn't have. There were 900 plus on the books, and he still got that call after he drug up. That's what happens when extremely certified meets nepotism. But I mean, you think we weren't talking about the United States the way some of them was talking? When has this country not discriminated against someone? Ain't this the same country that told my ancestors they were 3/5 of a man? Ain't this the same country that segregated water fountains, schools, buses, trains, swimming pools, restrooms? That's why when reading these comments, the first thing I thought of was that scene in Django. I love that movie. Not only because it's funny as hell, but because it's unapologetic in how it dealt with race. But as I stated before, the thing I pay attention to most when it comes to films is the writing. Why were there so many scenes that reference the same seemingly minute detail from the beginning to the end? That's a nigger on a horse. The writers made sure you understood how out of place that sight was for the times. And it resonates because there were a lot of racial incidents in this country that were sparked by a black person not staying in their place, which historically, and again by design, was a subservient position. There were no race riots that started over black people working in the field. There were no racial incidents or strikes that started because a black person was hired as a janitor or to work in sanitation. But when 3 black women were promoted to drill press at Packard Company in 1943 Detroit, all the white women in the department walked off the job until they were gone, which afterwards they were removed. And when months later, the same company would make its third such attempt to advance black workers into production positions by promoting 3 black men to the aircraft assembly line, 25,000 white men walked off the job in protest. When 12 of our people were promoted to a welder position at the Alabama Dry Dock and Shipping Company, 1943 Mobile, a race riot drove them off the shipyard. The National Guard had to be called in. They missed several weeks of work. When 15 of us were to be trained as riveters at Bethlehem Steel, 1943 Baltimore, 125 of them walked off the job. When just 8 of us were promoted to trolley car driver in 1944 Philadelphia, hundreds of them went on strike. A city of 2.5 million was brought to its knees. Federal troops had to be brought in to stop the violence and to end the strike because it was hurting the production of war materials. Those weren't managerial positions. They were just something other than unskilled labor. Thousands of white people went on strike because 41 of us were promoted, or dare I say, sitting on a horse. Apparently, those companies weren't aware that
it's against the law for niggas to ride horses in this territory.
Without knowing this history, one could possibly consider the ridiculous notion that DEI discriminates against white men, but knowing it, you know better. Knowing it should make you understand how important those initiatives are in making sure others get an opportunity. And again, those others are very much qualified. If you want to know what DEI really looks like, look at the upcoming Las Vegas baseball stadium project. It's part of a huge 3-phase project. To put it simply, a lot of people are going to make a lot of money. Phase 1 will be construction of the baseball stadium. That stadium is receiving $380 million in public funding. Nevada Senate Bill 1 requires that at least 51% of the construction workforce be women and minorities. That's clearly a DEI initiative. But if 49% of the construction workforce was made available to white men, when white people only make up 39% of the county and all others have to split 51%, is that initiative discriminating against white people? Or is it just making sure, in writing, the same as the Hoover Dam, that others are given an opportunity to have real impactful money come back to their communities also? Oh, and by the way, this project will be 100% union built, meaning only skilled labor was used. Skilled craftsmen and their apprentices. And as long as you're a third-year apprentice in most of the respective trades, you're making six figures on this job. Well, there goes the DEI is racist, DEI discriminates against white men, DEI didn't earn it, DEI means less qualified narratives. One project dispelled every narrative they had. It's gaslighting at its finest. This is why we have to be careful about the narratives we fall for. When we say something that's making sure we get an opportunity is dumbing us down and holding us back, we have been completely warped mentally, and that's what's holding us back. When we see a brother or sister advancing and holding positions of power and influence, there should never be a doubt in our mind of whether or not they're qualified. We should just be congratulatory. I see you, bro. Look at you, sis. You doing your thing. When we see brothers and sisters holding positions that we traditionally didn't hold, we should be encouraging. But when we look at them with our eyes squinted and say, who that nigga on that nag? What does that do for us? And it's a shame. It's a shame that a black man could get on this platform and speak to black people about our need to be included and include ourselves in these fields and receive pushback from black people. That video wasn't about pleading with others to advocate for us. That was about us putting ourselves in positions to advocate for one another, which is why I brought up Byron Goins and Terry Jenkins. One was a senior customer service manager, the other was a senior operations supervisor. Both were black men who, instead of firing me at the age of 23 from a job that I needed to provide for my family, they came in on their off days in street clothes to talk to me. They didn't cancel me, they counseled me. It's why I brought up Byron Stringer's work with my little brother. It's supposed to be each one teach one, right? Or is that just some shit y'all post to make your social media feeds look good? To be met with opposition from other black people who've bought into this narrative that skin color doesn't matter in the United States, all while talking about an incident where a black man lost his life after calling the police because he needed help, and the officer responded to his home and assumed he was the suspect, is fucking wild. It does not matter which one of us it was in that moment. The outcome would have been the same. That man was not a suspect. He did nothing wrong. He was fighting for his fucking life. He did what you're supposed to do as a law-abiding citizen. And the fact that some of y'all don't understand this shows how out of touch some of you are. But this is the last I'm going to speak of it. Because again, not everyone can be saved. Just like Django told Stephen, some of you are right where you belong.
I asked you, who this nigga on that nag?